Welcome to the Improv Comedy Connection podcast. For those of you who have been cruising along with us, this is a very different kind of episode. I'm your host, Whit Shiller, and I'm pausing the regular interview-based episodes that we've been doing because so much has happened so fast in the entire world that doing things kind of as usual didn't seem quite right. So today I'm sharing a summit of sorts on the improv community's response and state of mind in light of the COVID-19 crisis, as well as a little bit of a look forward. I'm posting this not only on the podcast platforms that you can always find the Improv Comedy Connection on, but I'm also going to use this as the first episode where we're going to post on YouTube in video. Joining me in this summit conversation were 7 other improvisers from the US, Canada, and Australia. Not every voice or community is represented, obviously, but I think we hope anyways that you'll find that some of your voice and perspective, that you'll find that in the comments of the folks that are on the call, and that you'll find some comfort and some perspective in the things that they shared. Our hope was this was kind of a time of self-care for the improv community, and we felt like you were there with us, and we hope that you feel like you were an equal participant in the conversation as it unfolds. So let's get into this special edition of the Improv Comedy Connection on how the improv community is doing in these strange times. So why don't we start with kind of checking in with each other, and use this also as a time to introduce yourselves for those who are going to be listening or watching this. And so let's go alphabetical, which I think gets things to you, Dave. Dave, if you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us how you're doing in all this.
Great. I'm Dave Razowsky. I live in Los Angeles, California. I'm the former artistic director of the Second City. I've been, for the past probably 8 or 9 years, maybe longer, I've been traveling around the world teaching my own methodology that comes out of theatrical base, Second City base, and something called the Viewpoints. So that's what I've been doing. This year I decided to do something different, as we all have. And that was, instead of traveling the entire year, at least it was the plan until a month ago, instead of traveling the entire year, what I decided to do was take every other month and stay in Los Angeles and teach my own workshops here in LA. And that was going very well. It's still going well, but for different reasons. And I'm writing a book, but I want to talk more about that later on. I'm so glad that we're doing this. It was an idea that I had with, and you're doing it so much better than what I would be doing. I think that people need to hear this, and I'm really glad that there's a sense of community that you're stringing together worldwide, and I thank you for that.
Certainly. Ed?
Hi, this is Ed Morgan from Dad's Garage Theater Company in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the Associate Artistic Director and Director of Education down here. I've been improvising with Dad's Garage for about 15 years now. And I also am very happy to be among this congregation of wonderful people to chat about how we can navigate this whole thing using the skills we have collectively stockpiled over the years.
And how are you doing, Ed?
Me personally, I think a lot of improvisers are anxious people, and I would like to let those people know that I'm with you. I'm there. It's just the uncertainty is ironically something that we're very familiar with and are trying to use in our mentality of, if we don't know what's coming, we can shape it. But I just think the biggest feeling around here right now is just like, what next? So yeah. We're, as my managing director always says, planning for the worst, but hoping for the best.
Yeah. Holly?
Hello, this is Holly Mandel, and I'm in West Hollywood. I spend a lot of time also in New York City. I'm originally trained as a groundling, which means character improv for people who don't know the groundlings. And then I started my own improv school in New York, also doing character improv, which is really my favorite type of improv to do. And I do travel a lot teaching character improv, and I also do a lot of work with women. I have a talk called Good Girls Aren't Funny, and it's been my experience of working with women, specifically in what comes out in improv, but really it's kind of across the board. I'm actually doing great. I really appreciate the community aspect of what seems to be emerging right now, people connecting. I've talked with people I haven't talked with in a really long time, and I really love that. Yesterday, I went crazy. I felt really trapped, and I felt a little nutsy, and then I woke up today, and I feel great and appreciative and weirdly sort of enjoying a lot of the downtime without pressure. So it does feel a little bit like it's a day-to-day thing, but for the most part, weirdly enjoying the pause.
Jay, I think you're up next.
Hey, my name is Jay Sukow, and yeah, I'm echoing a lot of the sentiments of just being excited to be here, and what an honor to be asked to be a part of this. And thanks for putting it together, Whit. I think I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say. I'm in Los Angeles, originally from Chicago, born and raised, and moved out to Los Angeles a few years ago. I teach at a couple places. One is West Side Comedy Theater in Santa Monica. I also teach for the Second City in Hollywood. And I have a company called Today Improv, and we teach improv to actors, regular folk, and business all throughout. I think one thing for me is that I'm somewhat excited about what's happening, because I think there's a lot of changes that are going on in improv due to necessity, and we have to make things happen. And I think we're pretty well equipped to do that. And one of the biggest takeaways for me is just trying to stay present. That's the hardest thing right now, is just try to stay present. What's an immediate danger? And then anything after that, you just try to stay moment to moment. Just take it like an improv scene. So I'm really jazzed up because I see a lot of innovation from a lot of artists and improvisers, and really utilizing this platform being online, unlike ever before. I always wanted to improvise with people from all around the world, and now this is forcing us to do that. So even though there's a lot of stress that's happening, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, I think eventually there's going to be a lot of good that's coming out of this, including forcing improvisers to slow down because you can't talk over each other online. So pretty excited about what's going to happen.
Yeah. Joe?
Hi, this is Joe Bill. I'm in Chicago. I'm a retired or supportive but non-participating co-founder of Annoyance Theater. I'm the director of corporate education at IO Theater, and I just remembered I am a guest artist in residence at the Second City. And that just means I can call and run a class if I want to. But I'm assuming that's not true these days. It's been a few years since I've done that. I like David Razowsky. I like David Razowsky, period. I, much like David Razowsky, have been touring internationally for about 10 years. I am a duo partner of Patti Stiles, of David Razowsky and Rebecca Northan, and many others. And I am, I teach lots of different types of stuff depending on where I am. I suppose I focus more on scenic improvisation, and I teach sort of a marriage between presence training for character, and I just incorporate neuroscience, and I use fancy big words that helps people be more present, I guess. I'm kind of in a mixed bag. I'm a little bit like Holly. I'm about 40% sort of blissful and peaceful and enjoying the downtime and staring around my place at a lot of things that I've put off till later, and then realizing that now is later, and that I have about 2 more months to deal with this stuff that I put off till later. So I'm latering the later stuff. I'm about another 40% my normal hypervigilant anxiety. So that it puts me sort of in Ed's category, where I'm not anxious necessarily about anything in particular, but I'm ready for the worst to happen. And I know the worst is going to happen, and it will be fine when it happens, because then I will have been right. Um, and then the 20% of the time, I just get hit with episodes of kind of quickly consuming dread, where I just, it's not an anxiety attack, it's not a panic attack, but it's like I'm wearing a football helmet and somebody grabs my mask and pulls me forward, and then a giant bucket of dread is poured on top of me. And I just figured out that it was dread about 3 days ago when I had my online therapy appointment, because therapists are online now too. And so I'm currently examining what dread is for me, and share the same thoughts of everybody else. It's really great to see this group of people here. And thank you, Whit, for putting it together.
Patti.
Hi, I'm Patti Stiles. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I started my improv training at the Loose Moose Theatre in Calgary, Alberta. I'm a Canadian, working with Keith Johnstone. So I am very much a disciple of his work and practice his work. I think he'd hate that I use the word disciple. Probably would. But too bad, Keith, I'm saying it. I've been the past artistic director of Rapid Fire Theatre in Edmonton and Improv Melbourne here in Australia. Also, I was the artistic director of the International Theatre Sports Institute. I work in using improvisation for spontaneity and for theatre making, focusing in basically what we're creating on stage and the relationship of what we're creating on stage, how to tell those stories and how to make it relevant and connect to the audience. Whatever we're creating, what's its purpose? That in mind, I've worked on and been co-creator or creator of shows like Quotable Women, Momentous de la Vida, How the West Was Improvised, This Is a Pipe, Lugares. I'm a duo partner of Joe Bill with Our Play. And all of those shows have different structural elements and different creative aims in how we're trying to relate and connect to the audience. For me this time, Australia's still sitting on the fence with things. So I actually am feeling exhausted because I just want the government to say we're locked down. And in the state of non-clear communication, everybody's making their own interpretations of what isolation, lockdown, what we can and can't do. And that's exhausting. Yesterday, we went from, groups of 100 people can't gather to groups of 2 people can't gather, which is ridiculous. Groups of 2 people can't gather. Why not just stay at home? And it's so clear that the drive is economic, not humanity, not the human thing. And that's driving me nuts. So I'm waiting for that to be said so I can actually rest. Like I'm waiting for that pause to be at home without going, why is that cousin running around and why is mother-in-law going to the shops and things. But that's just on a personal front. In the improv community, what I'm witnessing.
Can we hold on that just a little bit, because that's going to be our next topic, to talk about the improv community generally. This is kind of the personal check-in first, but I appreciate you you're sharing that and the difference in terms of where you're at versus the other places represented.
Also my feelings about that, right? So what I'm seeing in the improv community for me is raising my feelings. Yeah, so I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about me with them. What I'm seeing in the behavior and how people are responding and relating is building a lot of anxiousness for me, that I'm seeing so many people vulnerable and fearful and desperately trying to be relevant and survive And that's hurting me. My heart hurts for them and this expression of that panic. On the flip side, I have a lot of joy and hope with so many conversations like this about people going, how can we help? So it's scales.
Yeah. Rebecca? Oops, we got you muted here. Let's get you unmuted.
I just got a little sign flash on my screen that said unmute. Amazing. I'm Rebecca Northan, and I am the artistic director of a company in Canada called Spontaneous Theatre. And currently we specialize in long form improv shows in which an audience member plays the lead role in the play. And typically what we do is we travel across the country doing theatrical sit down runs at mainstream theaters. I'm the education and outreach person at the ITI currently, the International Theatre Sports Institute. I grew up in Calgary training at the Loose Moose with Keith and admiring Patti Stiles. I refer to myself as Joe Bill's improv mistress, that just because it does something for me. What else? I teach. I'm an alumna of the Second City in Toronto. I always forget to mention that. I think that's about it. And how am I doing? I have good days and bad days. It's a roller coaster, most definitely. I jumped online really early on as the sort of little North American virus explosion happened, and took a stab at teaching an online class really early, which kind of was good, but it also hurt my heart. Because I predominantly work in theater as a professional actor and in film and TV, all of my gigs have been canceled until December 2020. So that makes me a little bit anxious. But like a lot of people, I'm also mildly curious about the crumbling of capitalism.
Yeah. Before, I'll just I'll check in a little bit myself, but just the way this went, Dave, I feel like we didn't hear as much about how you're doing personally. And I'm always intrigued by your insights about yourself, as well as anything else. Can you just kind of speak to how you're doing? Oop. And demute.
Thank you so much. I was listening to everybody going, oh, I didn't say how I was doing. I had my, I was going to mention that later because of this book that I'm writing. If it wasn't for my daily connection with my editor, I think I'd be really kind of scrambling for something to do. But I've been writing a book called The Subversive Guide to Improvisation. I'm on my second or third draft, and it keeps me busy every single day, and it keeps me thinking. And I think that a couple of weeks ago when we first started this out, I was sitting and working on an editing session with my editor, Vera Cole, and I just said, I have to stop. My heart rate went up. It felt like I had no connection to my arms or my limbs, and I couldn't breathe. And I said, I got to stop. I sat on the couch. I breathed for a little while. And my girlfriend said that was essentially sort of a panic moment. And that was the only one I've had in a couple of weeks. I'm very lucky and unlucky at the same time financially, because a few years ago, my mother died and I have an inheritance. So I feel like that has given me some cushioning. And I think that a lot of people's anxieties has to do with certainly their financial situation, and all of us being, and I may be stepping on something we're going to talk about later, but certainly in America, all of us who are of the gig economy don't really have much of a safety net. And once Laura, my girlfriend, and I stocked our fridge with a couple of weeks worth of food, I can breathe a little. And I believe that any kind of checking in that we're doing like this to anybody, I've been hearing from people all over the world connecting, saying, I have to talk to you, I have to see you. And the fact that we do have video, that helps so much because we can't touch and we can't be in proximity to each other, but you can see the childhood home I was raised in back there. So it's a matter, how am I doing? I think I've had full night's sleep a few nights, but I do get up in the middle of the night and go, what the fuck is happening? And as Ed said, the skills that we carry with improvisation, we have to remember that, for me, what I've discovered is when I have those moments of what's going on, what's going to happen, I have to remember, I will know what I need to know when I need to know what I need to know. And right now, what I need to know is I am cozy in my bed with my girlfriend, and maybe there are a couple cats in bed with me. Hopefully they're ours. But what ends up happening is it's those improv skills that we have where you go, just be here right now. And I have to keep saying the mantra is, be here now, be here right now, be here right now. And look around and go, food, shelter, heat. I got some shekels in the bank. How am I doing? I think I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. It has been a really interesting. I'm Whit Shiller. I'm head up the group called Fish Sticks Comedy, and we do short form where we travel around and mostly community-based events, and we do corporate training as well, and some other things. But that's the primary thing we do. I'm in Milwaukee, and we have local teams in Atlanta, Denver, Dallas, and Milwaukee. So we have this geographic spread, which has been kind of impacted by this, but we can talk about that to the extent that's relevant. For me, I'm not a naturally anxious person. I feel that often makes me an outlier in most improv communities or collections of improvisers. But I do know that this has been a time where I have felt very aware of how other people are reacting and interacting or not interacting with each other. And Patti, you mentioned some of the desperation, I think, and we'll talk about kind of how that has impacted improv communities. But just little interactions that you have. I saw somebody walking by, and I don't know the person, but it was an older couple, and what had to be their older son, because you don't just hang out with somebody anymore because of the social distancing. And you realize, you figure out who's most important to you based on geographically where you're at. And for those that are living alone and locked in alone, that experience is got to be very challenging and kind of hurting for people who are going through that experience or who are separated from their family based on geography or travel, but now they're just stuck. All of these things. And the thing that probably most hit me yesterday, I spoke with an elderly woman who is not a family member, but she is going through the early stages of dementia and was not dropped off, but was placed in an assisted living home. And the next day, the order came down for the lockdown. And she's confused and overwhelmed. And I feel like there are parts of that hit us at different times. And so even though not a naturally anxious person, I am kind of anxious for what happens next, because as we're doing this, I worry if things really get that much worse, the worst case scenario plays out. I don't want us to seem flippant. And I could see if things are really bad, how just these concerns will feel so small, even though they're so real and present to us today. Anyways, that's I guess kind of where I'm at. But why don't we move to talk a little bit about the improv communities that you're part of or aware of or connected with, and what you see happening, and what should we be aware of in terms of how each other are doing as communities. Someone want to lead off with that? Joe, yeah.
So the first thing that comes to mind is my community is really more global than just Chicago at this point in my life. And so I've had I had a mini tour that was going to be Vienna, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Vienna, maybe down to Graz, and that canceled. And then a week ago, I had a 6-week visit tour of New Zealand from the last week in April through I think like the 8th or 9th of June, cancel. And then, of course, all the, like David said, I gig, and so I gig for myself. I do corporate stuff for IO, and I do corporate stuff for a couple different people that I contract to, and all that stuff's gone. But specific to the global improv community, it seems like where that community is, and I think this, I forget who talked about desperation or anxiety. I think initially, because we're improvisers, what started was everybody had to get online, and it's not even about doing improv, it's just about human connection. And so there is no art, there is no anything, it's just human connection. And then in that human connection, I think, came art. And some of the desperation and anxiety was, what is this new delivery system? What are we doing? And I should say also, just as a context piece, I don't believe that improv or impro is art. I believe it's an art medium. And I think it's like paint, just because paint exists doesn't make it art. So I think that we're not to the point where you're going to experience much artistry in this delivery system of improv or impro, but rather, if there's any art, it's the art of human connection through a different medium. And in that way, I feel all of the feelings. I admire you for not being on the anxiety spectrum or in that pool. It's my anxiety is just I don't know. It was bestowed upon me, I think, through childhood things, and so it just goes with me. And I think because I've always had a measure of anxiety, in some ways I'm used to this. So in the calm, I think that Holly was talking about, and in sort of the peacefulness, as long as I'm anxious anyway, I think I'm noticing people more that aren't used to being anxious and their relationship to their own anxiety, and then the improvisation that happens as a result of that. So that's what I'm seeing in this first 3 weeks or so in terms of my community. I will say that the annoyance last night, the annoyance over the last 10 days, has had a lock-in. And so they quarantined people for 2 weeks, and then they did a lock-in, and Mick Napier directed a show, and they put that sketch show on last night in front of nobody and had 500 people or something watching it. And so for me, that was something that takes me back to my early days of annoyance and the lock-in shows that I did. And to see them do a sketch comedy show that Mick directed, and few people are better than him at putting together a show with anybody. That was the most notable thing I've seen in the Chicago improv community that's happened.
Dave?
Patti said something, and it really resonated, and it goes with Joe's comment, and that's the need to feel viable. The idea that the thought of like, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? This seems to be a real existential experience. Obviously it's an existential experience that we're all going through. And I think that we've been talking about it, we're talking around it. But I think that it's, in a way, it's a renaissance, it's a rebirth, and right now we're going through the birth canal, and it's pretty fucking dark. And what I think ends up happening is we all got to realize, what I have to realize is there is a reinvention that is happening. There's a reinvention just in terms of our venue has closed. Our medium has changed, and we need to experience what that new medium is. So a lot of people are going to just go, let's throw this thing on the wall and see who salutes it, mixing metaphors there. But I don't see any reason why, because I've watched a lot of crap on video, but then again, I've watched a lot of crap when I've gone to a theater too. So there's both of those things. Both those things are true. I think what ends up happening is what's happening right now is throughout the world, we're discovering what this new now is about. And once we realize that, is it viable? Who the hell knows? We're not going to know for a long time. What I do know is this: if you have an idea, open it up. What Mick and Jennifer did at The Annoyance was phenomenal. If you have an idea, try it. We have this venue. Let's do that. I'm not seeing so much anxiety, but then again, I'm like Whit. I'm not an anxious person. What I'm seeing is I'm seeing people go. Somebody saying, I've got a barn. Do you want to be in my show? And people are saying, yeah, I want to be in your show. What's your show? I'm like, I don't know. Well, let's just do it and see what happens. Something is going to come out of all of this, and I have a feeling right now that what's happening is exciting to me, and I don't think I don't think I'm doing all blue sky stuff here. What I am feeling is people are willing. We have to pull some people out. Like, come on, do this. Let's do this. Like, get out of your shell. Know that we're here. Know that we're all here. And I think what we're doing right now is really exciting in that way. But I think that we have to know. People have to know that we are here with each other. We've always been here with each other. This is an ensemble thing. Take every day as you can. But man, how many times have we all failed? We failed so many times, and we're here, and we've learned from those failures. So, and if anybody wants to call me. If anyone wants to connect with me, because we're all in it together. And I love these 7 people that we're with, because I think that there's voices of reason and great teachers here. And what improv has always been is not just about theater; it's about your life. And this is really, really exciting for me. And I understand the anxiety. I totally get it. But we've got to know, because when this all first started coming out, I started reading what people are saying. And it was people were talking about suicide and ending it all. It's like, no. We're here. We're alive right now. This is all that matters, is the right now. So there.
Yeah. Patti, you've got your hand up, your electronic hand up.
I like that little electronic hand up now that I figured it out. Yes, following on Joe and David, I think very seldom do we have, or I don't know if it's ever happened before, where we've had an experience at a real global level. Everyone is affected by this, and everybody is having the same situation. There's infection, there's numbers, there's various levels of isolation. This isn't something that is happening in another country that you can go, oh, I feel for those people. It's over there. I continue my life as is. This is changing everything and everyone. So with that, of course, there's going to be fear and anxiety. The unknown always brings that fear. It's what we see when we're teaching. Students are afraid of stepping into the unknown of the story because it's the unknown. And then there's this scramble to avoid stepping into the unknown, to keep the status quo, to find a safety in what we know because we're afraid of that unknown. So it's not the flip side of the coin of, isn't it wonderful to see people explore this new medium? I think it's more like multiple sides, like a Rubik's Cube or dice in Dungeons and Dragons. Because of that fear, people are scrambling to connect. I absolutely agree. I think underneath that, the improv community and all the improv companies have been these separate pockets of family. And some people come to improvisation for the art form and what we can create, what we can do. And you form family around a shared objective or a shared love, a shared passion. There's a lot of people who come to the community because you're accepted. You go into an improv class and it's the first time you've had 20 people in a room look at you, listen, accept, support, give space. So the creators are scrambling, going, I don't have my audience anymore. I'm sitting at home and I'm not creating. So you've got that level of online, what do we do? But then you've got this other group of people who finally found a spot in the world where they could be. Simply be. And that's gone. And it's gone at one of the most highest points of fear and anxiety. As a result, we've got multiple conversations, multiple platforms, multiple things happening online. We've got improv companies trying to survive by doing shows and workshops to get some money in the bank because they're going to go under if they don't. We've got a lot of people who can now go, I'm a teacher, and claim space and teach for free, which is in contrast and competition to the people who are trying to survive. So there's a real scrum happening. The creativity is exciting. I'm wondering if there's space for everybody to just pause, think, reflect, ask, what am I creating? Why am I creating? How am I creating? How can I connect? Is an online workshop the only way to connect? It's a whole new world. And I think there's such great possibility, but I think some people have lead boots and they're stomping around in it as well. And there's a lot within all of that.
Yeah, I see a couple of hands raised, but just on that point before, maybe these will be piggyback comments that people have, but I think the observation that there is both an artistic element, or at least paint buckets around for Joe's benefit, and a community aspect to the theaters they're two different things. And the activity that seems to be primarily happening is trying to replace the artistic aspect, which is clunky at best, I'll say, I think. But the community aspect I'm hearing less of. And I know when we have had our Zoom meetings for the troupe, the team as a whole, that part has been very rich. And I feel like we've moved forward based on that. And we haven't produced any online content yet, because the focus has been first on the community as opposed to, and we don't have rent to pay either. So there's that, we have a different desperation level than someone who's got a check they've got to write for several $1,000s for this, that, or the other. But the community part potentially being neglected is I think a big issue. Holly, you've got something to say?
Too much to say. So many good comments. I love everything everyone just said. I thought maybe I could respond to the communities that I'm aware of, but I really like this theme of what do we do in this moment? Maybe I'll just start there because that seems the most interesting to me. I was talking to a couple of friends in London who we do sketch when we are in the same place together. And we were all realizing there's like a should. We should be producing online because we have this great opportunity, but we weren't feeling the desire to do it. And so part of what I'm feeling also is, improv for me is the most beautiful way to communicate to people. I don't like any other form but improv. I don't like the written word, really. And so to me, there's something about what do we want to communicate right now? I like what you said, Patti. Maybe we don't know what we want to say yet. Maybe we haven't checked in enough with ourselves to know what we want to say. And that's okay. And so we were talking about this pressure of seeing people going online and producing a lot of content and feeling like, oh my God, is this the new rat race? Do I have to get my own channel up? Do I have to get in there and get more likes? And like, why? And this is not anything that I wanted it to be. And so I guess I'm aware of, I'm saying so many things right now, but this need to connect to people can look a lot of different ways. And if it means putting down the comedy mic and just being with yourself or being real, or maybe journaling or writing, maybe that's the gift of the moment. And if a new form of communication emerges that maybe you haven't explored before, maybe that's the gift of the moment. Maybe it isn't being in an improv group. Maybe it's writing a book maybe it's writing poetry. I think there's an interesting moment for us to innovate. And so that's why I really liked what you said, Dave, is I think there's an innovation here. They say evolution is caused from stress, not from relaxation. So this is a moment to see how we evolve. Just to briefly talk about the two communities, if this is interesting to anyone. The Groundlings is in a very interesting place. I'm sort of peripherally involved. I go in and out. But they're a school that has levels and you get voted in and there's a whole competition thing. And I know there's a few schools that are in that model. And this is panic city because this is creating this feeling of I'm getting a little behind. What's going to happen when I go back in? There's a class, there's a vote, there's those kinds of things. So I think that is creating stress for certain groups of not being sharp, even if they want to enjoy the downtime. I think there's a concern that you're going to lose your edge. You were doing so well when class ended. They're starting online classes, but they're finding the improv piece quite challenging of how to actually really teach, not practice, but how do you teach improv, level 2 improv, where do you start doing characters online? So I think they're experimenting there. And then with my group in New York, which is much more interested in the community wit, like you were saying, I feel like they're doing levels and classes more just for the connection and the fun, and there's no real end game there.
Rebecca?
A whole bunch of things. I'm inspired listening to all of you. I suppose the two things that just really kind of stuck to the wall of the inside of my head was Patti mentioning the pause, because I'm really noticing in myself an impulse to pause. But I had panic first, right? So my first thing was to panic and go online and try teaching an online improv class, which I did, and I'm really glad I did it. I learned a lot. I mentioned earlier, it also it broke my heart because I couldn't feel the students and they couldn't feel each other. And I'm noticing in my community, those of us who sit on the board and are on various committees for the ITI, there have been all these panicked emails flying around of, we need to take a leadership role inside of all of this, and we need to generate content, and this panicky desire to create content sooner than anybody else. I kind of observe those conversations and I think, isn't this manic drive to create content part of the problem in the whole world in a little way? And so can we not breathe? I step back, and what part of me, the improv teacher part of my brain observes that and says, this is no different than baby improvisers panicked at the beginning of a scene and bringing too many ideas, when what we would do in that moment as improv coaches is say, let's everybody breathe and pause and just notice the moment. So I think in part I'm worried for the community. I'm inspired. I love that people are jumping online and they're experimenting and they're making mistakes and they're learning and they're failing forward. That's the beauty of improvisers. And I'm also seeing us in a period of time for which we have no frame of reference. Keith, who taught Patti and I to improvise, refers a lot to the circle of expectation. So you take a moment and you look at the given circumstances and what's the circle of expectation for where you are right now. And when I ask myself that question, when I'm on my own or when I'm looking at my community, I think, geez, the only circle of expectation that I have for global pandemic has been fed to me by horrible movies that have happy endings generally. But I know as a trained improviser, I still need to breathe and pause and just wait, because I don't have a big frame of reference that is anything but mostly negative stuff. I know that outside of the circle of expectation, there's the sphere of possibilities. And so I'm actually, on a good day, I'm asking myself, what's possible here? What's possible for the world? What's possible for the improv community? What's possible for theater? You know, yesterday was World Theater Day, and all of the theaters in the world are closed. So what's possible? I guess that would be sort of my hope going forward, is that we take more time to slow down and breathe, and then very quietly ask what comes next,
I think we've all probably seen the video of the Venice canals and seeing the dolphins swimming up and down the canals. It is a picture of what the pause can be and what it can produce, I think, in some ways, because those dolphins haven't been there probably for 200 years or whatever it is, because it's all been moving and moving and moving and not stopping and thinking. And the reflection point is part of the reason I think that it's good to stop and gather with this group here and others, to be able to take the time to reflect and not miss the moment, and what it can mean and say about us. Patti, you had your hand up first. Do you have something related to this?
Yeah, I want to say yes to everyone. I'd like to be, if I could say to the improv world, everyone, you're relevant. It's fine. Improv will keep existing. It's okay. But one thing I wanted to add very quickly, and this is a worry for me. We know when we're teaching improvisation, the failure is really important. And we have to learn how to fail and learn what failure means. And we teach that and we learn that and experience that in a safe environment. So we create a workshop space where it is safe to fail, and you get feedback on the failure. And that feedback comes from a teacher who is there with your best intentions at heart. Social media has not been the most supportive, open, understanding place for people to be vulnerable. It can be a cruel, vicious, horrible place that people attack for various reasons, in various ways. And people can be incredibly cruel in the safety of the home with nobody knowing whose name is attached to who. So we've got vulnerable improvisers going out into this public forum where they can get slapped from all different sides for what they're doing without any way of processing that, understanding that. And I really worry about those baby improvisers, those intermediate improvisers being vulnerable in that space.
When you say slap, what do you mean? Because I honestly, I don't know what that means.
Okay, two things. One, that they get into the game of how many likes, how many views, how many people are watching and commenting. So the work becomes validated based on public appeal, which we know is dangerous because it's a false economy of work. The trolls who start going after the work and criticizing not just the performance, but being critical of the people, making comments about individuals, just that horrible online social behavior. You put something out into the social media, you are out there vulnerable for anybody to comment in any way they choose. It's not a paid theater audience. It's not students in a room. It's a different platform. And I don't know if people are mentally and emotionally prepared what could come.
Is there a way, and I'm sure that there is, to control that audience so that it's not everybody who wants to be in the audience. It's more of a controlled environment. I believe that It's something that I did with sick puppies not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. Who knows what time means? And it seemed to be more of a controlled environment. So they knew who was in the audience. And because of that, they were able to take more chances. But I totally understand what you're saying. It's vicious because you don't know, people are able to say whatever it is they want to say.
Joe?
I was going to say, improvising online like this and like with the younger minds, I mean, on the one thing, it's there, you can have worry and at the same time know that they're not your responsibility. Online improvising is like doing bar prov times 1,000. So you're just improvising in a bar, but they're a bunch of drunks who can hide in their, basement with all their neuroses. And it's like, it's a character builder or it's not. And you're going to experience what you're going to experience. And in terms of the culture of going for likes, I mean, I think one of the things, I typically improvise in a way where comedy is a consequence. It's not a goal. And for me, that's a huge distinction. And it's completely fine to improvise where comedy is a goal. I'm lucky that I've gotten to play with in the Crazy Uncle Joe show at Groundlings. Like Groundlings is the best at it. Like comedy is a goal. Let's be funny. Cool. It's just not my wheelhouse. It's not my strength. But it doesn't make those people that are friends of mine, they're like any less generous or warm. But there's a consequence if you're going for comedy as a goal as opposed to connection as a goal. There's a human consequence if you're not getting the feedback that you're going after, and that's up to the individual to process as they will, I think.
When I think about the like aspect of it, I notice that there are online shows that are getting a lot of attention relative to what previously had been received by certain groups or troops. And in some ways, you shouldn't misevaluate those interactions because they may be more based on, I want to connect with you because now I have time, I have nothing else to do. It may not be a reflection on, boy, you've hit how to do comedy online, right? Because you got 400 people watching live when before you never had more than, 40 or 50 or whatever it was. It's a different metric.
That's happening a lot around here, especially. We've been doing a lot of video stuff running every day, and it really does seem like a lion's share of viewers are coming just because they like miss people. They miss specific people. They miss certain performers' faces, and they just are like, oh, great, there they are, right? I think it is sort of like anything going on right now. I think a big part of, if you are spurred to create content as a part of this, there's a large part of it that has to be managing your expectations of what you're trying to accomplish with that content. If you're trying to like blow up as an entertainer right now, I really don't think that it's a great environment for you to try to do so, just because there's so much competition right now. Like all of our content being created right now is just for the purpose of keeping us sane. And so if you come into it with, I think, that viewpoint where you're going like, look, I'm just trying to make something to distract people for a second, and if 5 people watch it, I don't care, because that's what we've learned a lot about Twitch in the last few weeks, and like the average stream is watched by 0 to 5 people. So like just temper those expectations and realize that like what you're putting out, it's in the void. You've thrown it out the window, regardless of whether people are going to tune in. But if you have people who want to hang out with you, then like they might want to watch you do something weird rather than just sit on your couch and talk. So yeah, it's a weird time to be trying to like sublimate your fear and your anxiety and your need for people into art. If you want to, Joe, if you wanted to call it art or not. But yeah, that need to just like do stuff really does seem to be hitting people pretty hard, in my community at least.
To be clear, I'm fine with anybody calling improv art. I just wanted to raise another frame.
Yeah, no. I gotcha.
Jay, you've been I can tell the brain has been turned on. What are you thinking, Jay?
Oh, I'm just, it's interesting just to hear these different points of view, because it's so prevalent right now, and hearing what everyone has to say. Like, everyone has such a wonderful insight and knowledge, and also offering their thoughts on this. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's every time one of these people are talking, it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think we're all feeling a lot of the same thoughts and trying to find where our place is. I found that, like, I've been one of those people that has been doing a lot of online, like, teaching and performing. And part of that is like, man, I really miss seeing friends and having friends say to me, let's try this 10-minute thing, or let's try this. For me, it's all about experimenting and doing more than like what the result is right now. To me, I guess I'm just I'm pretty excited, because I'm like, I've always wanted to be able to improvise with people all over, and it's always been like, it can't work. But now you're kind of forcing it to work. So it's like, how could this work? And so it's like, I don't know, let me spend 10 minutes with a person and figure out maybe beforehand, hey, we're in a car ride, and then let's try that. To me, I'm really excited about the trial and error, and people are watching it, but also people are watching it to say like, hey, I really enjoyed watching you and your partner or partners. And to me, I can sit and pick apart how bad the shows are for me personally, and be like, I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, or I could have done that. But at the end of the day, it's providing some value to someone who's watching it. And people have been very complimentary as far as that took my mind off of what's going on right now. And so for me, I think that's part of it is maybe this is a little diversion from what people are experiencing. And this is something that can bring a little joy to people, even if it's one person or 5 people or 10. My goal is not how many people are going to watch it. That's not for me personally. My goal is like, ooh, maybe this is a chance for me to work with as many of these fun people that I like working with as I can. So I'm excited. Whenever somebody asks me to do a show, I'm always like, okay, I'll do it. And there are clunks and there are moments of technical difficulties. But it reminds me of like the early days where nobody was there to see your shows anyway. And so now we're just figuring out, how do we make this medium work? And that is just subjective to whatever you want it to be. Like, I have taught online, and I've taught in people from all over. And it's funny, like, to be able to work with groups from around the world now is very exciting to me. It's not the same as it was before. It's never going to be the same, but I think it's a wonderful challenge to tell ourselves, how do we make it work now? Like, we know the limitations right now, but is there a way to make this work? And I think you see a lot of people who are looking at this as an opportunity to add something else to whatever this improv is. And so I get very excited because I also know that a lot of people I want to work with and have fun with or do a scene with ain't doing much right now. So now's a great time to reach out to a lot of people and say, hey, let's do something. And like Dave said, hey, reach out. Like, I have no problem if you want to do a 5-minute scene. Let's just see what happens. And the more you do it, the easier I think it'll get. So
yeah. Dave, you had something?
Yeah, I just want to say one of Jay's super skills, that's not the phrase, but that's a phrase, is connecting with people and forming community. And I think that for a lot of us, this could either be an extension of what it is that we naturally do, or to say, how do I do what it is that Jay's been doing? Because if there's anybody that nobody works harder at putting shows together that I know than Jay. And the fact that you've been doing this for so long, it's that you're ahead of the curve. But what's also really fun for me is that you're not just ahead of the curve, but you're bringing people with you on that curve. And what ends up happening is we all get inspired. And I think that that's a huge thing, is to be inspired by everybody and whatever the heck anybody is doing. But the idea of the trolls are going to be out there. And I think that a lot of us are used to the trolls being out there. And I totally understand what Patti's saying. And she's absolutely right that a newbie could be killed by that. But I also feel like if the newbie is getting in front of people doing this, maybe they are willing to have, to have their skin toughened up. And I'm not saying that anybody deserves to be tormented, but at the same time, we're encouraging people to be brave. We're encouraging people to share their voice. We're encouraging people to use those skills that they have as human beings and connect to people. But I absolutely understand what Patti's saying too about, can we be nicer? I know I can be nicer, but that's why I don't invite you all to my Twitter.
Holly, why don't you follow that?
One more thing.
Oh,
One
yeah,
more thing.
okay.
One more thing. I don't remember who said managing expectations, but that is just an awesome concept of managing expectations and knowing that whatever it is that you think is going to happen is not going to happen. So take what it is that you need from what is occurring right now and let that be the manna that you're holding on to. Let that be the bread that you're eating and let that be the thing that jives you, because what other people think of you, and this is hard, but what other people think of you is none of your damn business.
Holly?
Love it. Totally agree. Right on. It's funny. I just wanted to share two things. One is, just in the course of this conversation, I'm aware how much I want to connect with improvisers and just fuck around and talk and create, I'm just like, that's something. And Jay, you were speaking of this kind of global connection with improvisers, and maybe we've all had that dream of being able to do stuff with people from all over. And I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to share that that's really coming up strong for me, is almost not what the result is going to be, but just the act of it sounds very exciting. And then I'm thinking about the book, Something Wonderful Right Away, the oral history of Second City's creation. It just popped in my head. I guess when they started, they wanted to, it was to create theater for the masses. And it ended up becoming the actual art form that people wanted to watch, was the creating of the plays. Nobody wanted to see the plays. And it's making me think we can't force this into any way. Improv will tell us what it's going to become in this moment. There's an alchemy of this moment with the heaviness that it is and the pain, but also the potential and the fact we can't be in rooms together. And there's an alchemy right now that I'm aware of, like, this is cool because improv will show us what's next if we pay attention. And it's the pause that Patti was speaking about, and it's the listening, and it's the not making a problem of it. And how much can we let go of the map that we want and really be present? So I'm actually much more excited now than I was an hour ago. So thank you all.
Well, that's good. Hey, Jay, you have your hand up, and let's hear what you have to say. And then Rebecca, I want to come to you with a question to start off the next topic. So be ready to unmute.
Oh, thanks, Whit. And again, thanks everyone. What a great idea to bring people together to talk about it. I think one thing that teachers in general, I think, always want to work at is, like, how do you get students to slow down and not over talk over each other, and not go for laughs. And I'll tell you what, doing online classes, they can't talk over each other because you can't hear. And very soon it's a give and take that I haven't seen a lot of before. And so I think that's one positive. It's going to force people to give and take a lot more. And I've noticed too, when I'm doing like improv with my friends online, it's more about just us having fun together, which is why I got into doing it. So I think this will aid in improvisers actually growing, because they're not going to feel that pressure of an audience or their students looking and laughing at them as they would maybe live. And also you kind of are forced to slow down and work on the give and take.
Mm-hmm.
That's a note I'll use next year. Pretend you're teleconferencing.
So we've kind of naturally moved into the next topic that we have on our agenda, and that's been what it's taught about ourselves and about improv. I want to stick with that topic, but Rebecca, I want to follow up on something that you shared, and the emotional content when you said that not being able to feel your students' reaction hurt your heart. My question on that is, has that said anything to you that is different, or that you perceive as different now, about what it means to be an improv instructor versus an improviser? And also, is the lesson different for the teacher than it is the performer, in terms of being able to feel what's happening in the room because you're not in the room? Does that make sense?
Not really, but I'm going to try to answer it anyway.
If you'd rather I try again, I can try again.
Try once more.
Okay, here, I'll try to simplify it a little bit. In your description of teaching, from an online perspective and not being there, has that experience told you more about what you do as an improv instructor? Why don't we just focus on that?
I'm not sure that I'm totally capable of separating the improviser that I am from the instructor that I am. So I'll speak from that place. And I'll say that as I've been improvising now for 31 years, the thing that interests me the most, and that is the listening. I used to think I was a really good listener until I started to do my own show. About 10 years ago, I created a show called Blind Date that's toured all over, where my co-star is a person from the audience. And so until I started improvising a 90-minute show with a stranger, I thought I was a good listener. And then I brought a civilian on stage for 90 minutes and went, oh, I've never listened ever. And now I'm really responsible for taking care of this person. And what that experience taught me was that listening is 360 degrees and spiritual, and that my ears are like 10% of the listening that I do. And so what I'm observing in myself when I've either taken a stab at improvising online or I've taken a stab at teaching online is that currently it feels to me that that's like 90% listening with just my ears. And I end up finishing I'll enjoy myself in the middle of the session, but when I get offline, I'm noticing that I feel grief because I can't listen fully with my sixth sense, whatever that is. My spidey senses are not, I cannot energetically feel the person through the screen. I mean, maybe if I keep doing it, my psychic connection with people will like go through the roof, because I'm so hungry and desperate for the kind of listening that does not involve my ears. And I don't know how to do that online. And neither as an improviser or an instructor. And I know that when I work as an instructor, I'll have a list of things I think I want to do in a class that day. And then I'll walk in and I'll feel the room and go, oh no, these guys need something else right now. But that's coming from like somewhere inside my body where my energy overlaps their energy. And I don't have that same visceral experience online. Maybe other people are having that, and I have some sort of like online improv handicap. I don't know, but that it's been curious to me that when I finish an online class or experiment, that I feel sad afterwards, and it makes me want to just sit more in the pause, because it doesn't quite feel the same to me at the moment. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
If it doesn't, you answered the question I should have asked. Joe,
oh shit, I'm getting psychic. It's working.
Joe, you had something.
So I'll echo with first what Rebecca said is I'm a more kinesthetic, intuitive response type teacher that I need to be with people in order to have all my faculties available to me.
Those were the very big words I wanted to use, but I wanted to leave them for Joe.
I didn't have them until I read your face kinesthetically online.
Oh my God.
But so what I wanted to say was, at last count, I think I have a folder that says workshops on my laptop, and there's 87 different workshops I can teach. And of that 87, if I remove redundancy, that is, this stuff would also be in others, that probably can come down to somewhere around 35 to 40 unique workshops that are just their own workshops. And of those 35 to 40 unique workshops, I'm still in the process of figuring out which ones of these can I teach online. And I think the numbers maybe 10 to 15 of them. And it's strange because I've been a corporate trainer for a long time as well. And so when the internet started and Cisco invented WebEx and all of this shit that I just had such a horrific response to, I would teach corporate programs on WebEx, but there would be an engineer who would manipulate stuff behind me, and everything has come, so you have to do all of this. And I had a visceral reaction to it and always thought, that's corporate, that's not for improv. Even though in coaching people online, I might use some reads that are available to me because I'm also an improv teacher. So what I've had to do is turn that frown upside down. And there was a German group last week that had the online improv festival, and I taught an improv class in personal stories for source material and long form. Now, I don't know if I would offer that as an in-person offering, and I hated the title of it until I just sat and thought, that's something that people would take online. And so to me, I have a natural hesitation and a natural negative visceral reaction to teaching online, but I've taught, I don't know, 100 or 200 different type of things online. And now it's like, this is what the reality is. And if I have to chip away, $100 at a time or $200 at a time to make rent, once I think I run out of money in maybe 2 months, then that's what I'm just going to do. The other thing I'll say is that, and this incorporates kind of what we were talking about, there's also people that I've talked to that I noticed the rush to do stuff online, and I didn't feel that, because if I'm going to do something that I want to either try to monetize or something I'm going to present as entertainment, then I am taking the breath and I am thinking about, well, what could that be? And I've talked to a number of the people that we see right here just separately, and that's my human connection piece. But for me, I want to do one-on-one human connection with people. I don't want to human connect with people in a big short form jam. That's just not for me. So everything is, getting to David's point, it's a new paradigm, it's a new world, and we have to adapt to what's here. And so at least there's stuff that's there. I'm working on a redesign for Sharna right now on a client wants to do a 60-person communication and collaboration workshop, and I've just about finished the first draft of what I think that's going to be online. And so, okay, this is what it is, and this is what the world is, and I get to choose my own response to the invitation, which now has to be different by necessity than what my response was before this.
Betty? Go ahead, Betty.
Sorry, I was going, unmute. I think it's the improviser's natural space to take any offer and go, right, positive energy, what can we do with this? And I love that. We're going new reality, new forum, new possibilities, new medium. Let's look at all the possibilities and be open. But I think there's also space for the comfort and the discomfort to exist together. And I think there's space for the obstacles and the opportunity to sit together. And in our improv spirit of going, let's be positive, let's also give space to having the conversations about the difficulties. Not that the difficulties stop the progression of the exploration, but if we don't talk about the chunky bits, if we don't talk about the different pieces of the puzzle that isn't quite fitting, then we don't learn what's the possibility of those chunky bits. So, you know, there are possibilities, as Jay was saying, when you're teaching online, people can't talk at the same time, and that's a great gift. But I know in a lot of workshops where I'm teaching, the things that students need a lot of work on is the connecting with the other senses, as Rebecca was saying, and Joe was saying with the very big words. To be responsive, to notice when your partner's shoulders go up, when there's tension, to see when the feet start being aggravated, when the hands start twitching, to be responsive to that, because those are also offers, and they're really important offers. There's the intellect and there's the verbal. There's also the spirit, the emotion, the physical, the space, the connection with the audience, the reality of the room, the lighting in the room. All of that we become really in tune to. And those are steps that take a longer time, I find, for students to embrace, because the hearing a word and talking is a little bit of an easier connection than hearing the word, talking, seeing the body, feeling the person, being present. And those really important skills are lost in this medium. Even eye contact. I look at you, but I'm not looking into you. And I know you're looking at me, but I'm not seeing you look into me. You can't feel my emotion. You can't see if I'm jittering. And we all, when we're online or have a camera, we start to change our physical perception because we're being watched and recorded. It's a different environment. And yes, that gives us gifts and opportunities. I think we also have to bring the obstacles into the conversation, just to note them, to keep them present. Because when we do go back in the room, we're going to really need to work on that. Because that's the thing we can't get through this medium, although there's other things we can.
One of the things I noticed when just setting this up for recording, and by God, it better record. It looks like it's recording. This has been wonderful discussion. But there's actually a button to say, do you want Zoom to touch up your appearance? And little things like that. There are just these oddities that go along with it. And when you are speaking, I don't know if you guys do this in these meetings, but I'm conscious that if I'm looking at the camera, I'll probably look more normal in my little rectangle than if I'm looking at the person that I'm talking to, because your eye levels are not quite right. So there are those unnatural aspects. Dave, you had your hand up. I got you unmuted.
That's okay. I just love everything that's happening here. Patti, how did you put it the negative? You didn't say negative and positive. What did you say?
Comfort and discomfort, and obstacle and opportunity.
Okay. One thing that Laura just pointed out is it's really hard. But I think that we all started out in grief. The thing that we most love is really seems to be on life support in a certain way. And I know for me, what that meant was, and again, I go back to the idea of, yes, there are things that are going to have to change in what it is that we're doing, but I'm going to eat up whatever it is that I can in that moment. But you're absolutely right, Patti, and Rebecca as well, that we're not getting that human interaction, but yes, well, let's acknowledge that. But what is it that we are getting that we can grab onto? But I absolutely understand 100% what you're saying. A little piece of me died. For me, a little piece of me died, and that when it comes back, I don't know what it's going to be like when it comes back. I know that we're getting into that section of our programming, but I do know that I need to go, this doesn't work anymore. What is it that is working? And so when Joe said he's looking at all of his workshops, I mean, I'm sure everybody here has a nice long list of workshops, to go through them and to say, what works best online? What requires a little tweak, or what requires a little tweak, or what requires a little turn, so that we can utilize these things with all the things that you're saying, Patti, that you were saying that may not work, but what does work, and how do we work what it is that does work into what it is that into how it is that we work. Well, it's a lot of work in there, but I thinking about the grief is it breaks my heart. And what Becca is saying about not being able to have that contact and not being able to have that connection, what Patti's saying about not being able to have to see there, and the eyes, to look into the eyes, because the eyes have so much to do with what it is that we're doing, and to have that spatial relationship to going, I'm close to you, it scares me, or I'm close to you and it enthralls me, because I can move here, but it just looks fucking weird, like it looks like a pizza commercial. So, if I do back here, you go, but that doesn't matter. Joe has a tiny little, what is it tiny that you had? Oh.
No, I was signaling to Whit. I just had a tiny add-on, but finish. Go ahead. I just wanted to tag on to this idea of grief, because I think that people can teach some basic improv stuff like listening and not talking over each other. And anybody can teach improv 101 stuff. But it's like, this is my life, and this is my part of my identity. And part of my identity is I live in Chicago. I don't live in New York, or I don't live in LA, because I don't have passion about being on a screen. I don't have passion about being on television. I don't have passion about being on a movie. I have passion about being a Chicago theater stage actor. And the ethic of Chicago is stage acting with an emphasis on ensemble and being a part of that. That's what this city is. And that's part of the reason I've stayed here. So the grieving part is, oh my God, you mean I have to not be a Chicago stage theater actor, and I have to adapt myself to this screen thing that I've seen, so many friends that are in the business on both coasts and who aspire to that, and I celebrate every victory they have, but that's just, I'm not passionate about that. And so for me, deep in my ego, or from a therapy sense, part of my grief is I don't get to be a stage actor when I'm online. To indicate forward to whatever you want to bring it up, like, how do you stay sharp? I don't know how to stay sharp. I don't even know what that means in this context. But I think I'm going to be so joyful once I get to be on a stage in front of a live audience again, that the adrenaline will be what my sharpness is.
Yeah. Rebecca, you wanted to tack something onto this?
Well, I mean, I think one of the opportunities that I see in moving our practice online is in part a little bit of what Joe is talking about, right? Is that we're used to working on stage in front of an audience, and now we are on these little screens, and any kind of performance that happens on screen, whether it's television or film, comes with its own vocabulary, right? So we can, I don't think that we can take what works on stage and put it on a little screen. It's why when theaters shoot archival videos of live performance, those videos are terrible. Nobody wants to see those, right? It doesn't translate. So if we as improvisers can really, and it's a bit like what Dave was saying as well, is well, in the vocabulary of working on screen, what does this shot imply? What does this medium shot imply? What if in the middle of something I'm way back here, that we have to start to really work with the medium. And once we start to figure that out, and that we can ask things like, well, in what narrative context are we in two different locations talking to each other? If we're working on screen, is a viewer going to suspend their disbelief in the same way and say that Holly and I are saying that we're in a cafe, but we have two completely different backgrounds? I don't know that the suspension of disbelief for things that happen on camera are exactly the same. So then can we adapt and say, all right, everybody hang a blue sheet, so that at the very least, when we say, hey, we're all in the same location, it kind of looks like we're all in the same location. So that we can start to ask those kinds of questions as content creators, as directors of improv shows, creators of online content, that we help ourselves that way by thinking, I'm not going to do a live show on stage. I'm going to improvise a short film. I'm going to improvise a scene from a sitcom. I'm going to improvise something from a drama, in which case being in a tight close-up makes more sense.
That reminds me, Rebecca, of this was several years ago, but Cisco, the technology company, has and this was a while ago, but they have this thing, they call it telepresence. And what it is they'd set up these conference rooms, and the conference rooms in each location would look the same. They would have the same wallpaper. They'd have the same counter for the table. I was in a meeting. They made sure to bring everybody Panera boxes, so everybody had what looked like the same lunch, and the screen was life-size people. And you did start to feel the immersive aspect of things as if you were across the table.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, myself and a couple of improvisers experimented a few weeks ago with the idea that if we all had as close to the exact same looking props, then I could pick up this glass and I can hand it to somebody who can grab it in their frame and pull it out. So again, we're working, you've got to go, how do we work with the camera? Thanks, Patty. Thanks for that drink, Patty. Thanks. It's not safe for us to be sharing glasses right now, but
That's true. But there was also the element, I think, that it was important that you had people to your left and your right in the room with you, which created this sense that you were together, so that you could forget on the other side of the screen you weren't quite together in the same way. And that took hundreds of thousands of dollars of technology, which is not going to be available to us at present, where coming up with some tricks and gimmicks might help, but it's going to be a hard way to get all the way home. I'm just going to note, based on the time that we're at, I'm going to make a punt, and we're just going to knock out the two breakout sessions and kind of work to finish up this topic and move into the last, what does improv look like post quarantine, if you will. Before we do that, though, Holly, you and I had a little bit of an exchange before this session, and I think you used a different term. Are we doing what we say, or are we acting as consistent with who we are as improvisers? Kind of a practice what you preach. I think you said it differently. But do you think we are doing that? Are we? Where are we not? Can you give us your thoughts on that topic?
I just shared a different, possibly additional topic that I thought was interesting for me is how much are we living the improv that we know right now? And I know a lot of people have said, like, oh, like you said, Rebecca, I thought I was listening, whatever game that was that you were doing, show you were doing. How present, I thought I was a real present person until these last couple weeks. And it's like, oh, okay, there's another layer of being completely okay with what's happening. That the offer of the world, let's say, that's this moment, and how much am I yes-anding this offer, is just an interesting, I think, contemplation. And I often find, I'm sure like all of us, we feel like improv is something to live, it's guidance to live. And that to me is a very interesting exploration, is how much am I taking what I'm doing in my class for 3 hours a week and applying it to things that feel challenging, because they are amazing tools. And I know what you were saying, Patti, it's not Pollyanna, it's not pie in the sky. There are obstacles, and there's obstacles in scenes, and there are things that happen in scenes that we all know that we don't love. And it doesn't mean we have to embrace them necessarily as is, but we can't pretend they're not happening. So anyway, that was just an example for a conversation. I find people are really going, wow, this yes and thing is helping me get through this very challenging day.
All right. Well, let's finish our time together, if we could, on what improv will look like, and maybe what should it look like, as best as we can say in these moments, knowing that there will be lots of lessons learned. There'll be more time to reflect. I hope it's a short experience for all of us, but there are certainly lots of scenarios that are being spun out there where this could be, many months as opposed to 1 or 2. What do you think we should do post, or are there things that you think we ought to be conscious to avoid, traps to avoid falling into after this period of time?
I think there's like a weird, delicate balance going on with that sort of thought, right? I mean, starting strictly from the place where we don't know how any of this is going to end at the moment, which is like makes planning insane. I think there's like a lot of people who would love for things to just be exactly as they were before we left, right? Just when your Friday night show got canceled last week because suddenly the theater was closed. But I also would caution people against saying like, well, now everything does. It's that same thing we said about like making content just to make it, right? Is if people start like advocating for like radical changes in the way they improvise just because they feel like the winds of change are blowing and they have to do it, I think that could be equally as sort of like misguided. So I think just making sure that you're keeping true to what improv means to you is going to be what's most important, right? Whether that means that the state of your theater has changed or however it is that you perform. I think that coming out of this, what's going to be very important is simply that you're coming back to it with real intention and just sort of like staying true to it.
Dave? Oops, let's get you unmuted here.
I know that when I go to Chicago, I'm going to go, because I live in LA, when I go to Chicago, I got to get an Italian beef sandwich because I haven't had one for so long. So when I'm going to be on stage with people, I know that there's going to be a physicality that's going to be there. There's going to be an awareness of the heat that comes from the intimacy of being on stage. What I want, if you say, what is it that, I guess this is what you asked. What is it that I want to happen? I want to see people be more emotionally connected. And I think because we've been so physically disconnected and emotionally disconnected and connected with ourselves or, whatever it's going to be, whoever we're with right now, there's just going to be a hunger for emotional connection and a hunger for scenes where people, where it makes a difference in people's lives. I do believe also, that as Joe put, comedy is a consequence and not a goal. I think that there are going to be a lot of people who are like, we've got to laugh again. Everybody's got to laugh again. And that's true. But I also believe that for me, I believe that there's a depth that we need, an emotional connection that we need, that we're going to hunger for. I know that we're hungering for it right now. What Rebecca's been saying, what Patti's been saying, that the emotional connection that's missing is going to be present, and we're going to have to teach people how to do that. We're going to have to teach people how to take that energy that they're using and the energy that they have and how to make the best of that at that moment. And there's going to be a lot of what my dear friend Alexandra Billings calls shattering. People are going to shatter. And right now we're all shattering. And this is just a great opportunity to talk about that. The shattering is what you thought, who it was that you thought you were. That's not who the hell you are right now. And whoever it is that you are, that facade has gone. And that's just going to happen the moment that we get the moment that that President Kamala Harris says everybody can come out now, that's the moment they're going to be saying, hey, everybody, it's time to party, that sort of thing. But let's connect. And Ed, I gotta say, man, my heart goes out to you and all the other small little all the other theaters. Patti, your theater that's going on over there. Holly, your theater. Rebecca, Joe, the work that we're doing. People are going to be hungry for it, but that's going to be another thing that we're going to have to do is to go, who needs what and where does my energy go? And I think it's just so vital that we start preparing for that moment. And I think that it's so vital to go, yeah, we're yearning for it. How do we do what Rebecca's saying? How do we, and for me, I'm looking for that Venn diagram, that sweet little intersection between video and stage. And what is it that we have in those moments? And you came up with some great points there. And that has to do with now, not has to do with later. But we're going to be taking all these things that we're learning from the infrastructure that we're needing to go, and we're going to use that on stage and with real people, but connect and touching and holding hands and intimacy and all that stuff. That's what I look forward to.
Do you worry about after this period of time how long it will take us to feel comfortable being less than 6 feet away from each other? Because I feel like when I am walking around, I am very conscious of that radius. And even when I see things online, I saw a group of stand-up comedians in Nashville who were talking, and they were all on stools probably about that far away. But we here in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin, we're on the lockdown kind of thing, and it felt uncomfortable to watch. I expect to crave those things too, and I'm not the most touchy-feely person, but I anticipate that, but at the same time know that there will be a recalibration that needs to happen too.
Can I jump in? I gotta say, so my show Blind Dates that I've been doing for 10 years, I bring a non-performer out of the audience and we go on a date, which usually has at some point us making out. So it's hard for me to do a show with a civilian, who has to sit 6 feet away from me. Now, that being said, the work has always been adaptable. And I did a little tiny run of it March 5th, 6th, and 7th, just as things were starting to happen. And there were us using hand sanitizer and kind of laughing about, well, I guess that's the new reality. Little did we know 3 weeks ago what it would turn into. And the giant theater festival that I was set to work at this summer and fall, one of their venues is 1,800 seats. So when will 1,800 people feel comfortable coming back together to sit in a space en masse to watch a play? Or do you have to take an 1,800 seat venue and leave 8 empty seats all the way around? I'm worried about how long that social distancing is going to really affect us, what the trauma fallout of that is. But just to circle back around, I mean, whenever we're allowed to emerge again, I do hope that the truth and the vulnerability that we're all finding with each other online, I don't know most of the people in this call, and yet I feel very comfortable hearing your vulnerabilities and sharing my own, because I think, my God, life is short. So why not share with you that my heart is kind of broken right now and I'm full of grief. That's a better place to start the conversation than pretending otherwise. And I hope that the comedy that is the consequence, in the new world is really coming out of truth and vulnerability. That's the work that really inspires me.
Holly?
Did you want to follow on from that, Joe? Or
I'll tag on for 30 seconds. And just to yes and that is, for those of us that teach, one of the most important things we have to do as teacher is to model what it is to be a learner, and to model what it is to be a learner while we're teaching. And so part of modeling that learning is gathering like this and learning from each other what our experience is, so we can empathize with different points of view, so we can learn different points of view that we're not in possession of, but we can also consider. And then also to be able to take that, if we have the privilege to also go on stage as a teacher and to use that learning to show up not just as an actor, but also someone who's learning even in the moment what somebody's response to us is as we're delivering to them. Go ahead, Holly.
I was thinking of the question, and it's hard for me to think of going back. I mean, with every week, it's like, what's back? And so I hope we integrate what we've learned. You know, I hope like what Dave was saying, there's more depth. And there's a realization of what just happened and how profound it was and how terrifying it was and how heart-wrenching it was. And, you know, I know several of us know Gary Austin, who started the Groundlings, and I got to spend some time with him before he passed. And one of his biggest gripes was, you know, improv in a lot of places become two actors doing stand-up. It's not this beautiful, spontaneous, alive, vulnerable, raw art form that is literally being created in the moment in front of everyone. And if we're not bringing everything that's happening right now with it, it's lost. And I think to celebrate, I hope that improv shows are celebrations of people being in the same room together, valuing it that they've never valued it before. And the last piece is, you know, I know theater seems to be a mirror of what's happening and a model of what could be. And I hope we model what could be as we come out of this phase and show people even viscerally, what do we love about being human right now? And let's show that. So I'm very excited for that.
Patti, did you raise your hand, or were you reacting with the applause hands?
Both.
Yeah.
Really loved what you just said, Holly.
Yeah.
Yeah, really love all of that. It's an interesting question. What's the future going to hold? We don't know. But one of our strengths of as being an improviser is that we live in the I don't know. We crave the I don't know. We fearlessly step into the I don't know. We're kind of all being called to do that now. Like right now we're in this hold pattern, and we all know there's this big I don't know. The unknown is ahead of us. And that's interesting. It's also interesting that when you think of how much improvisation, the techniques, the teachings, were developed by looking at a societal norm and questioning the societal norm. And does that norm serve creativity? Does the structure of education serve creativity? Does the status structure in traditional theater serve creativity? And we've all got the opportunity now to stop and reflect and look at, does capitalism serve creativity? Does the current world improv system serve creativity? Does the status structures between improv groups and community serve creativity? Do the individual structures in individual improv groups serve creativity? There's a lot of questions we've got the opportunity now to ask and to learn from. I think the only thing we know about the next stage is that it's not going to be what it was. There's going to be a lot of improv groups that don't survive this. There's going to be a lot of companies that shut down. There's going to be a lot of festivals that no longer happen. There's going to be a lot of students who drop out of classes and courses because they've been unemployed for a year and their focus now is their mortgage or their rent or food. There's going to be a lot of performers and teachers who are no longer able to step into the forum because of personal situations. we also know scarily that at some point, this is going to affect us as a community on a personal level. There are going to be improvisers who get infected. And there's the possibility of what happens next with that. So there's a lot of fear in that as well. And there's a lot of loss in all of that. But the one thing I do know is that improvisers are incredibly resilient. And we work best individually and as a community when we come together in a shared space, listening, supporting, valuing, and working together. And that's a pretty great superpower. You know, maybe this is the time that we topple world governments and improvisers take over. I don't know what the future will hold, but I'm hoping that we go back to those things that bond us as a community, and we don't go into fear and start fighting and competing for survival and sell out our true skills for other fears.
Yeah, that's very good. Jay, what do you see down the road? I know it's kind of hard to follow that. It's kind of hard to follow each and every aspect. I just so appreciate everybody's comments and perspectives, and in some ways it could have put a stopping point at 40 different points in this conversation. But I'd like to hear what you have to say on this topic, because I think we've heard from everybody else, I think, on this topic at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think everybody, what they've shared is so valuable, and it's not just to improv, but to life. And I'm with Patti. I think this is the time for, us to lead the way. And she was half joking about toppling governments, but I think we can have an effect on people when we can force that change. And there are a lot of improvisers already who are doing things like Dick Costello, and he was the CEO of Twitter at one point as an improviser. So we have a lot of improvisers out there. And I think, we're suffering and we're in the middle of a global trauma right now. And so I think if anything, what I hope this leads to is just more empathy and just being kinder to each other. And I think that also extends to when you get in towns, there becomes the smaller the town, the more battle it becomes about getting improv students. And it becomes you get into different camps. And I think what I hope happens is that we just all become, improvisers. And whether you're doing whatever form you're doing, I hope we can remove labels of what's a valid improv form, and short forms are better than long form, and medium. All that stuff doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is that you can get together with somebody and laugh and connect with them. And anybody's experiences in the situation are very valid, and all these points are very valid. And they're, what I view as improv is not what everybody else views as improv, nor should it be. I can just say hey, here's things that I take from improv, and it works for me. Anytime I'm talking to students, I say, this has worked for me, or this is something I find value in. It doesn't mean it's the right way. So I think what we can do is hopefully come out of this more empathetic, more listening to other people, slowing down for a minute, and just experiencing those moments on stage. Because like it's been said a lot, I think we are, and Dave, I think you brought it up, we're in grief right now. We started, for those of us who, and I think all of us have been doing it for a number of years, and it just became like something we expected to do. And now that's taken away from us. And we all got into this because of that connection on stage. So if we can maybe value our time together even more, I think that would be one thing that could come out of this. But I think just be kinder to each other and start small. Just start with people around you, and then build, focus on the tribe nearby. And then that leads to a bigger tribe and a bigger tribe. But, those are the things you can control. So like Holly said earlier, it's are we living those lives and the things we say as improvisers? I always think in a situation I'm in, what would I tell a student? And it's so much easier for me to say, stay present and everything's going to be okay. But then I have to take that same medicine, and I have to be wait a minute, what do I espouse? What are the things I believe in? I need to embrace that. And so, part of this is for us to look at ourselves and say, okay, what are the skills I've learned here? And what's becoming really important to me? I think it is a brave new world. We aren't going back. and now we can embrace it. And is there a way to now bring technology onto the stage as well? So it's not just in a room, but can we use some of this technology, like Rebecca was saying, and can we start playing around a little bit with it and lead to some innovative shows that maybe we wouldn't be able to do before? Because I think it took something like this for people to go, okay, now it's real, and now how do we deal with it? So let's come out of this just stronger together. You know, that's why we improvise. We're not by ourselves. We're always with people.
Yeah. Well, that is all really, really good stuff. And we'll finish our time here. I do think it is it is enriching. I hope, Holly, I think you said you feel better than you did an hour or so ago. I do as well. I think there is a commonality among improvisers and the improv/impro community, which is about us being human and connected with each other. And if we keep that thread and care for each other and find ways to be kind and be the best versions of ourselves, we may see a better world on the other end of it. But I do think, Patti, you're right that there will be some change. Change always brings stress, but it's also opportunity. My house is a lot more organized than it would be if I wasn't locked in. I have seen a renewal, and I hope we keep this together. Hopefully this is a short-lived experience, but I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your time and thoughts. I know it's going to be very valuable when it is available, and I'm going to try to make that happen as soon as I can.
Thank you, Whit.
Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you to Dave, Ed, Holly, Jay, Joe, Patti, and Rebecca. Good God, everybody, for making this such a rich, positive conversation. I know I speak for the other 7 that we hope that it was a comfort to you and that it was a useful time and that you felt that you were a part of the conversation. That was our hope. There are many things to be concerned about, but this is a time for improvisers to care for each other and to adapt and reflect. Hoping this doesn't last long, just like everybody else, but I've also been thinking a little bit about whether there are some additional conversations or topics to address. And, the podcast is new, but perhaps it is positioned to be a bit of a catalyst for some of these conversations, or if I can help do that, I'd like to do that. If you've got an idea or some things that you think would be worth talking about, then do let me know. You can do that either by sending me an email, wit@improvcomedyconnection.com. You can also go to the website, improvcomedyconnection.com, and I think I've got a contact form on there. I'm pretty sure that I do. Or you can go to the Facebook discussion page or Twitter, Instagram, those kind of things. I will certainly do my best to respond, and I know the other folks on the call and others are desirous of being helpful and useful to you in this time. So I hope you stay safe and healthy and hang in there.